My ex-wife emptied our daughter's scholarship fund and ran off with her partner. Then my 11-year-old said, "It started with fish tacos." I remember that part clearly, not the meal exactly, but the small rituals of it. The way the oil hissed when I dropped the strips of cod into the pan, the way the cilantro smelled bright and wet under the knife, the way Claire's footsteps sounded on the stairs, light and fast like she'd forgotten she was mad at me. It was Thursday, early evening. Spring had started warming the windows, but the light still looked tired by 5. That dull gold kind of light that makes everything look softer than it really is. I remember the kitchen felt warm, a little humid, and I was wearing a sweatshirt even though I didn't need to. There was music playing, something soft and acoustic. I think it was Iron and Wine. I was trying to make the house feel normal, like nothing was unraveling under the surface. Claire came into the kitchen holding an envelope, her face tight, pale in the cheeks. She had that look kids get when they're trying to be calm, but their little bodies can't contain it, like she was clenching her whole self. Her eyebrows were pinched up at the middle. I saw the letter and something in me went cold. She handed it to me, didn't say anything at first, just stood there with her hand out like she wanted to drop it and run. "What's this?" I asked, wiping my hands on a dish towel. She didn't answer right away, just stood there with her shoulders curled in like she'd made herself smaller. When she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear it. "They said the tuition check bounced." I blinked at her, then looked down at the envelope. It was from St. Agnes, the middle school she was supposed to start at in the fall, the one we'd spent a year touring, discussing, daydreaming about. Claire had loved the art studio, the big windows, the koi pond in the courtyard. She had imagined herself there so vividly that I'd started seeing her in the halls already. I used to think I was giving her something stable, something lasting. I opened the letter with shaking hands, and there it was, printed in polite, detached administrative language. The deposit check for her tuition had failed, insufficient funds. I went to the laptop on the counter, opened the browser, pulled up the bank account like maybe the letter had made a mistake. I already knew it hadn't, but hope is a hard thing to kill. I typed in the password, clicked log in. The number stared back at me, $0. I refreshed it again, same result. That's when my chest started tightening, like something was wrapping itself around my ribs and squeezing. I clicked through the transaction history. It was all gone, every cent from the scholarship fund I'd been building since Claire was 3. Every birthday gift I'd squirreled away, every freelance paycheck I'd split in two, every piece of guilt I'd tried to cover with money after Mallory left, gone. And I already knew who had done it. Mallory had access, of course she had access. We opened that account together back when we still shared a last name and a future. I'd never removed her from it. I thought somehow we were still on the same page when it came to Claire. That no matter how bitter the divorce had gotten, no matter how strange and stilted our co-parenting had become, the fund was sacred. It was Claire. I hadn't talked to Mallory in a week. Texts had gone unread. That wasn't unusual. She had phases where she disappeared into her own world, especially now that she was with Jess, the woman she'd left me for. It wasn't that she vanished exactly, more like she muted me. I'd gotten used to long silences, delays in replies, vague responses about being really busy right now. But this wasn't silence, this was theft, betrayal. I turned around, Claire still standing there, not crying, not saying anything, just waiting for me to explain like I had answers, like I was still the grown-up in the room. I don't understand," I said, a lie I understood perfectly, but I needed a second, needed something to lean on. Claire didn't move. "I'll fix it," I said, my voice cracked on the word fix. It sounded stupid, hollow. She didn't believe me, I could see it in her eyes. Not that she didn't want to believe me, she just knew. Kids always know when the adults are bluffing. I walked outside, I didn't mean to, I just moved. The door creaked behind me, the air was cool and soft. It smelled like wet leaves and barbecue smoke from someone's backyard 2 streets over. The sun had dipped behind the neighbor's roofline, casting everything in that shadowy blue that makes you feel lonelier than you should. I sat on the porch steps, still holding the letter. My hands were shaking. I wanted to call Mallory right then and scream or cry or beg, but I couldn't. Instead, I just sat there, the silence around me like water filling a room. There's a kind of heartbreak that doesn't look like what you see in movies. No dramatic breakdown, no bottle of whiskey on the table, no punched mirror, just numbness. The kind where you feel like your skin doesn't fit anymore. 8 years I'd been saving that money. Quietly, steadily. Every birthday I'd told Claire it was going towards something beautiful, a school that would see her, challenge her, protect her. Every time I'd said no to myself, to trips, to new shoes, to nights out, I thought it was a gift I was giving her, a promise. Mallory used to say I was too sentimental. She was the realist. The one who made decisions fast, clean. I used to admire that about her, until it was used to justify leaving. When she left me, I told myself we'd still be a team for Claire. That was the lie I clung to, the lie that helped me sleep. And now I was holding a letter in my hands that proved it had never really been true. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was what Claire said 10 minutes later after following me out and sitting next to me on the step, knees pulled up to her chest, chin resting on them. She didn't even tell me, she said, her voice flat. She just left again. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. Just sat there with her, the letter on my lap like a wound. And in that moment, I realized something had broken. Not just the fund, not just the trust, but something in Claire. Something I couldn't fix with words or promises or tacos. That night she didn't eat. She went to her room early, shut the door quietly. I stood outside it for a long time, listening, no crying, no sound at all. Just the low murmur of her fan and the silence of a child trying not to need anyone anymore. I stayed up late, staring at the ceiling, at the shadows on the wall, at the life I'd built slipping through my fingers like dust. And somewhere in the dark, a thought came and sat in my chest like a stone. What do you do when the person who is supposed to protect your child becomes the one she needs protection from? The morning after the letter, I woke up before the sun, in that gray hour where everything feels heavier than it should. I hadn't slept much, if at all, just lay there on top of the covers in my clothes. Like getting under the blanket would have been too much like admitting the day was over, that what happened was permanent. The house was quiet. Claire's door was still closed. I didn't know if she'd slept. I wanted to knock, ask her how she was, tell her something comforting, but the words felt like crumpled paper in my throat. I made coffee instead. The clink of the spoon in the mug was the only sound in the kitchen. The milk had gone slightly sour, but I poured it in anyway. I stood there for a long time, watching the coffee swirl. I had this strange thought, maybe if I stir it long enough, it'll undo something. I kept thinking about the moment Claire handed me that letter, how small her shoulders looked, how her voice sounded like it came from far away. I kept thinking about the word she used, bounced. 11 years old, and she knew what it meant for a check to bounce. I called Mallory again that morning, voicemail. I didn't leave a message. What was the point? What could I possibly say that wouldn't come out twisted with anger and disbelief? My hands were still shaking. I typed out a long text and deleted it. Tried again, deleted that one too. Instead, I emailed the school, apologized, asked for an extension, said we were experiencing an unexpected financial complication. I used vague language, professional sounding, like I hadn't just watched my ex-wife siphon away our daughter's future like it was spare change. When Claire came down the stairs, she didn't look at me. She poured cereal into a bowl, no milk, sat at the table, ate in silence. The sound of her chewing, the metal spoon against ceramic, the quiet scrape, it was unbearable in its ordinariness. "Hey," I said, my voice felt thin, "we'll figure this out." She didn't respond. "Claire." She looked up then, slowly. Her eyes were bloodshot like she hadn't slept either, but there was something sharper than tiredness there, something colder. "I know what happened," she said, her voice didn't waver. "She took it." I stared at her. "What?" "Is the money? I know it was Mom." I wanted to lie, wanted to tell her it wasn't that simple, that we didn't know all the facts, that maybe there was an explanation. But I couldn't lie to her anymore. She wasn't a little kid with crayons and bedtime stories. She saw through everything now. "Yeah," I said finally, "she did." Claire nodded once and went back to her cereal. That was it, no crying, no tantrum, just a child swallowing disappointment like it was nothing new. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog. Every time I looked at her, I saw the edges of something hardening. Some kind of quiet resilience I hadn't wanted her to need. She still drew in her sketchpad, but the pictures changed. No more animals or houses or sunny skis, just black smudges, jagged lines, abstract shapes that felt like screaming without sound. At work, I pretended everything was fine, smiled, answered emails, took calls, but my head was somewhere else entirely. I ran the numbers over and over again, my salary, the remaining savings, the cost of St. Agnes, alternatives, public schools, scholarships we might apply for if there was still time. At night, I started drinking again. Not heavy, not recklessly, just enough to take the edge off. A glass of bourbon in the quiet, the ice clinking in the dark like a metronome. Claire didn't say anything, but I caught her looking once, a flicker of worry in her eyes. I put the glass down after that, didn't touch it for days. I started calling around, a lawyer, a friend who worked in finance, another parent who'd once mentioned switching schools after a sudden expense. Everyone was sympathetic, no one had real solutions. And then there was the day Claire didn't come out of her room for hours. I knocked gently. You okay? Yeah. You want to talk? No. I stood outside her door for a long time listening. I could hear the soft scratch of her pencil on paper. I imagined her drawing that same split tree over and over again, the one she'd shown me last week, half alive, half dead. I went back to the kitchen and stood there staring at the empty sink. The house felt too quiet, like everything was holding its breath. And then, without thinking, I called Mallory one more time, not expecting an answer, just needing to do something. To my surprise, it rang, then again, then her voice. Hello. I froze, my mind went blank. Mallory, I said, and her name tasted bitter. A long pause, hey. That was it, no panic, no guilt, just a casual hey, like we hadn't been on opposite ends of a disaster. I assume you know what this is about. I do. Then why haven't you said anything? Another pause, then a sigh, because I didn't know how, I didn't think. You didn't think, I repeated, exactly. I didn't yell, I wanted to, but instead I felt myself going flat, monotone, like my emotions had burned themselves out. Claire knows, I said. She figured it out before I even opened the bank account. She's not stupid, she's just 11. God, Mallory whispered, I didn't want. You didn't want her to find out, or you didn't want to deal with it. Her silence was answer enough. She said she has to unlove you now, I told her, my voice cracking. That's what she said, that's where we're at. Mallory started to say something, a sob maybe, but I hung up before she could finish. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want another apology that cost her nothing. I stood in the hallway for a while, breathing hard, the phone still in my hand. And then Claire opened her door. She didn't say anything, just walked out and stood next to me. I heard, she said. I nodded, I'm sorry. She looked up at me, it's not your fault, Dad. But it felt like it was, it always did. She leaned into me just a little, just enough that I could feel her warmth, and I placed my hand gently on the top of her head. We stood like that for a while, two people trying to hold together something already cracked, the future uncertain, the money gone, the damage done. But still we stood. The first real rain of summer came the night after I hung up on Mallory. It started as a slow drizzle while Claire and I sat in the living room watching an old Miyazaki film, Kiki's Delivery Service. She used to love that one when she was younger, back when her world still had room for magic. We barely spoke during the movie. She leaned against me, her head resting lightly on my shoulder, and I didn't move, didn't even breathe too loud, like I was afraid of disturbing that fragile peace. Then the thunder started. Low and rolling like a grumble from deep underground, the windows rattled. Claire didn't flinch, just pulled the blanket tighter around her knees. She stopped reacting to loud noises. That scared me more than anything. She used to jump, laugh, cover her ears. Now she just absorbed things. Rain, noise, silence, all of it. I stared at the screen but wasn't watching. My phone buzzed next to me on the couch. Mallory. Claire looked down at it, then up at me. Are you gonna answer? I didn't want to, but something in her voice, calm, almost curious, made me nod. I stepped into the kitchen, the rain louder now on the roof. I picked up. Her voice was low, tired. I want to explain. Explain what? I asked. How you gutted our daughter's future and vanished. Go ahead, I've got time. As I know you're angry. No, I interrupted. Angry doesn't cover it. Angry would mean I still care enough to be surprised. I'm tired, Mal. I'm just so goddamn tired. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, hear something in the background, maybe the hum of a fridge, maybe Jess's voice. I didn't plan to take it all, she said. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Jess had this opportunity, a startup, something she believed in. We were short on cash, and I thought if I just borrowed some of it. You didn't borrow, Mallory, you stole. Well, I thought we could pay it back. I laughed. You and your girlfriend, who doesn't even know Claire. You thought you'd gamble our kid's future on a startup. I could feel something inside me rising, not rage, not quite. Something deeper, a kind of grief. She trusted you, I said, my voice starting to shake. Even after you left, she trusted you. You were still her mother, and now she talks about you like a ghost, like something she has to forget just to keep going. Oh, I never meant for that, she whispered. Then what did you mean, Mallory? What did you think would happen? She didn't answer, and in that silence I realized something. I was never going to get the answer I wanted. Not from her, maybe not from anyone. I'm going to fix it, she said quietly. I'll sell the car, I'll ask my parents for help, we'll get the money back into the fund. I sighed, my hand running through my hair. It's not just about the money anymore, it's about the damage. You broke something, and I don't know if it can be put back together. Her voice cracked. Do you hate me? I closed my eyes. No, I said, but I don't trust you, and that might be worse. I hung up. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the wall for a long time. I expected to feel lighter. I didn't, just hollow, like my chest was a room someone had moved out of. Claire was still on the couch, the credits rolling. She looked up. Did she say anything? I nodded. She wants to try and fix it. Claire was quiet for a long time. Then she said something I wasn't prepared for. I think I can re-love her. I looked at her stunned. Not now, she added quickly, and not the same, but maybe someday in the past. I didn't understand. She turned back to the TV. Like, I can still love the version of her I remember before all this. That way I don't have to hate her now, it's easier. I felt something crack open inside me. You're allowed to be angry, I said. I know, she said, but it doesn't help. I sat down next to her again and we watched the credits in silence. I thought of all the versions of Mallory I'd loved. The woman who danced barefoot in the kitchen, the one who cried at Pixar movies, the one who held Claire like she was made of stars. And I realized I'd been mourning someone who didn't exist anymore, maybe never really had. That night I couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt soaked through. I sat at the edge of the bed and opened the drawer of my nightstand, pulling out an old photo, Claire at 4, wearing a princess dress and face paint, Mallory holding her from behind, both of them laughing. I looked at it for a long time. Then I placed it back in the drawer and shut it gently. Some things I thought you can't burn, you just bury them deep and plant something else on top. The days didn't get easier, not at first, they just got quieter, and I learned to stop expecting ease. There was something oddly peaceful about that, releasing the fantasy that life was supposed to feel good all the time, that parenting, that healing, that waking up to a cracked life meant something was wrong. Sometimes this was just what life looked like when the dust hadn't settled yet. The mornings became our new rhythm, not cheerful but consistent. Claire would wake up before me most days, pad downstairs in her fuzzy socks, make toast or oatmeal, or sometimes just eat dry cereal out of a mug while sitting on the floor in front of the sliding glass door. She liked to watch the birds now. She said they reminded her that not everything stays gone in winter, that some things come back. Her words, not mine. We stopped talking about Mallory, not out of avoidance, but because there was nothing else to say. The story had run its course in us, left its marks, and now we were just living with it. Claire had folded the betrayal into her understanding of the world in the way kids do when they realize their parents are not gods, just people who sometimes do unforgivable things. And I had folded it into mine too. I took on extra freelance work, late nights, weekends, a few side clients that weren't glamorous but paid the bills. I gave up on the idea of private school. I let go of the guilt mostly. Claire, despite everything, was adapting, thriving in some strange way. She found an after-school art program at the local rec center and asked me if she could join. I said yes before she even finished the question. Her drawings changed, gradually. The dark shapes gave way to surreal little scenes: a fox wearing boots, a ladder stretching from a bedroom into the sky, a girl with clouds for eyes. They were still a little strange, a little haunting, but they had color now. There was story in them again. One night she brought one to me. It was a drawing of two hands, one large, one small, planting something together. Just the hands in the dirt and a tiny green sprout in the middle. "What's this one?" I asked. She shrugged. "I don't know, just a thing I drew." But I knew, and I think she knew I knew. That weekend, I cleaned out the storage closet, not just for space, but for clarity. I needed to let go of the things I'd been carrying that were never going to be useful again. Old baby clothes, photo albums I couldn't look at without freezing, a stack of greeting cards from Mallory tucked into a box marked 2009. I didn't throw it all out. I'm not that strong or that dramatic, but I packed it neatly, taped the boxes, labeled them past, and put them on the highest shelf. I kept one photo, Claire in her ladybug costume on Halloween, grinning wide enough to split her cheeks. Mallory's arm in the frame, but only the arm, a suggestion, not a memory. That one went on the fridge. Claire didn't say anything when she saw it, but I caught her looking at it while she brushed her teeth. One night she asked, "Do you still love her?" I was washing dishes. I dried my hands slowly. "I love the part of her that made you," I said. Claire nodded like that made sense. "That's a good part," she said, "even if she messed up the rest." It wasn't the kind of conversation people put in movies, but it was real, honest, quiet. We kept going like that, living in the small, true moments. I started cooking again, not just heating things up, but really cooking. We made dumplings together, and she learned how to fold them better than I ever could. I bought her a cheap used bike and watched her wobble down the sidewalk in front of the house, her hair flapping behind her like a little flag of hope. Sometimes, late at night, I'd lie in bed and let myself grieve. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a kind of breathing through it: grief for what could have been, for the future I thought I'd built, for the version of myself that had believed we were all on the same side. But the grief didn't crush me anymore. It just sat there with me like an old roommate, familiar, contained. I didn't block Mallory. She emailed once, said she'd wired a few thousand back into the account, said she was sorry again. I didn't reply. I let the money sit there like a bandage on a wound that had already scarred. Claire didn't ask about her, not anymore. But sometimes I'd find her flipping through an old sketchbook or staring out the window with that quiet look on her face, not sad, just thoughtful. She was rebuilding something in herself. I could see it, slow, intentional. And so was I. One night when I tucked her in, yes, she still asked sometimes, though she'd never admit it. She looked up and said, "I think we're okay, huh?" I smiled. "Yeah," I said, "I think we are. Not perfect, not whole, but okay." And that was enough.